All right. Welcome back to the Board Drill Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kyle, and with me is my co-host, Matt. Tonight, we have a special guest, Coach Irsik from Folsom High School out in Northern California. He's the defensive coordinator there. Coach, welcome to the Board Drill Podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. Been listening to your guys' stuff lately, and it's been really good to listen to. And just wanted to give you guys a shout out for some of the content and the depth of information you guys are putting out there.
No, we appreciate it. I'm glad to see that it's made it all the way out to California, right? With the internets out there, Matt. No one gets the South Park reference but me. Okay, fair enough. Matt, what were we saying?
I'm not. I thought you were making a Knoxville reference there.
Oh, no. They have.
Well, we've been...
Coach, in case you're wondering, if you've listened to any of our Tennessee ones, they have the worst internet in America in Tennessee.
It can't be. I grew up in Western Kansas. It probably can't be worse than that. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's a valid point. So we haven't got any coaches from Western Kansas yet, but I'm sure we'll eventually get there and we can complain about their internet too. So, well, tonight we're going to talk about the modern defense and run fits out of that, Coach. So I know you're going to kind of kick it off. We're going to have a chat. If you're listening tonight, this is a good one to listen to on the podcast. It's pure podcast form tonight. No video, nothing going on. Obviously, if you're watching on YouTube here, there's video of me and Matt. My coach is on the phone tonight. We're just going to chat some run fits with them. So, Coach, why don't you lead us off talking a little bit about your defense, and we'll kind of dig into it.
Yeah, sure thing. And I'll be presenting at Glacier, and stuff will be getting recorded there. So if there's video content that guys are looking for, I'm more than happy to share it with them if they reach out. I'm on X at Coach Irsik 1, so guys listening can reach out to me there, and more than happy to share anything with any listeners out there. Folsom defense, we're very multiple because we have to be. Our schedule is pretty wild. We'll see De La Salle, who's still under center, running 21, 22 personnel. And then the next week we'll play Pittsburgh or somebody like that. It's going to be strictly 10 personnel spread, aired out. And then we've seen even a lot of 11 and 12 personnel in our league now, and teams figuring out how to utilize tight end bodies. So we've had to go to a multiple structure, and our structure allows us the flexibility to do that, is that we can get into anything from a bare and under and even and odd, 1 high, 2 high, 3 high structures, and be able to do it with the same defense on the field, and not having to personnel too much. So it's been a really long road to get there, but playing really good teams has forced our hand in that, and it's made us better, and we're always trying to play better teams. So it's made us better as coaches from the schematic standpoint.
Yeah, so real quick, one thing that stuck out right there is that you just talked about getting in several different structures with one set of personnel. So are you saying like the vast majority of the time you guys play your defense with just kind of 11 starters and subs, or is it, you have like the 14 guys that play, kind of some of that?
Yeah, we have we try to be able to run anything we can with the 11 guys that are on the field. Now, this year we've been afforded the luxury of depth. So we had 47 players record defensive production for us this year. So
wow,
we were able to spell and rotate and do a lot of unique things with that, which is a nice luxury. But at the same time, we still want the luxury of being able to get in and out of certain looks without having the personnel change too much, especially because we see tempo change also. So that's a big part of it. And I think the biggest thing with that is teams have gotten really dynamic with how they use tight ends, and that they can get into empty with 2 tight ends, or they can get into true 12 look with a tight end wing as a nub, or even unbalanced and things like that. So that's kind of the main reason we install it that way. And we just make sure that when we're doing our installation process that we talk about the components to be able to defend every formation out of any look that we're in. So that's we call it the big 6 components. Those are always our formation adjustments for FIB or condensed or empty or whatever, right? And our big 6 is on every single Visio slide that we show our kids in our May installs for spring.
Yeah. So little bit, I'm going to keep picking at this question a little bit because I want to know more. If you were to try to define the personnel that's on the field, like, are you 4 bigs, 2 interior backers, and a nickel, and, you kind of 5 DBs? Are you 3 bigs, 3 linebackers? Like, if you had to define it, if I made you put it in a box, could you do it?
No, it's a really good question. For us right now, I think we play with 3 true defensive linemen. The 4th guy is more of our hybrid guy. He could be a stand-up, he can put his hand down, and he can also play boundary outside backer looks for us. And the running joke at Folsom is we play with 7 DBs because we don't have true linebackers. We're always loaded at the defensive line. We're always loaded at DB. We're always thin in the linebacker department. So our linebackers are always guys that are 185, 190 pounds.
Yeah.
They play well in space, and we manipulate gaps in front structure to be able to accommodate that. And that's, it's still a luxury for us in that we have those guys that can play in space. They're just slightly oversized DBs, but, we had 6 Division I signees on our defense this year, and none of them are linebackers. So they're all
Wow.
up front or they're on the back end. So, and that's how it's been here for 10 years, and it's probably not changing anytime soon. So we're pretty smart about how we do that. But even our, what we would call our Mike and our Will, our 2 inside backers, those guys are basically just bigger DB.
They're like a thick safety, right?
Yeah, the thick safety. That's right.
So, no, I love that. So one piece you just talked in there, you talked about manipulating run fits for some of the smaller guys inside. So do you want to get into a little bit of that, of how you guys are doing that and kind of changing it up?
Yeah, and we play multiple fronts, right? So we're even, odd, bare, under. We had a lot of success with under this year.
It's awesome. I love under, coach.
Yeah, and for the amount of 21 personnel that we're starting to see, like, that's been really, really good for us versus 21 sets. But yeah, I think with that, we always try to make the ball bubble, is what we say. So we're always trying to control the bubble of the front, right? And the bubble is like what the offensive guys call, when you see an even front, teams typically set a 3 tech to a side.
Yeah.
That could be pretty predictable. And then there's a bubble between your nose and your end, right? And that's where teams try to run the football a lot. And for us, we're always about trying to take away that bubble, whether that's pre-snap or post-snap, whatever our front or our movement is we just want the ball to work lateral.
Yeah.
If the ball works lateral, we talked about the 7 DBs. Our 7 DB guys can run the ball down. As long as it's working lateral, we could be successful. And so one of our main objectives is trying to show a lot of different looks so that you can't be predictable on that front of how to block us, but then also making the ball work lateral. And that's what our strength has been on our defense for many, many years.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, Coach. It's definitely something that I've done quite a bit. I've always kind of been an even style front guy, but we're trying to do the same thing, right? We spill it, make it run to the sideline. Usually I've dealt with some pretty good athletes on the back end myself. If we can make you run to the sideline, we feel really good about chasing you down. If you hit an A gap, we got a few more problems coming down the pipe there. So
yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of the things we see now, we saw probably more wide zone than I expected this year, but
yeah,
we're still seeing a lot of gap scheme, and that doesn't even matter with the personnel. Just like every team we play, they're trying to run gap scheme, and gap scheme's all about attacking the bubble. And, if we're good about how we manipulate the bubble and basically taking that away from them, and that's where we're going to be successful in defending that.
Yeah, so let's chat a little bit about that. How are you kind of attacking that and taking away that bubble against gap schemes?
One is just a lot of fronts, right? And so, like, one of the very first things we install is just an even front, and we can dictate different rules about how we want to set the 3 tech and how we want to play tight ends. And so in our even look, we actually put our ends head up on a tight end. And we're doing that because in that, what we call a knock 6, we're taking away that angle for the tray block to be able to get up to the backers by getting knocked back on the tight end. And so that's been really good for us. When we get into our Okie and our odd stuff, we're playing in a 5 on a tight end and a 4-eye versus a non-tight end. And when we get into, and we call Okie and odd reduction. And so for us, reduction is a 5, a 3, a 0, and a 4-eye.
Yeah.
And that's been really, really good for us, depending on who the tight end is. So we always take a hard look at how they use their tight ends, what's their tight end good at. If their tight end's a good tray block guy, we want to try to get as much knock on him as possible to prevent that movement from happening. And I think one of the things that makes gap scheme so alluring is having blocking angles, right? And when you put guys head up, you're taking away the angles versus when they are offset into gaps, teams typically get the angles and they're more successful versus if they're not, then they're not, right? So that's always a big look. But anyways, when we install that even front, the first movement we put in is called Raider. And Raider is just taking that defensive end to the bubble side and slanting him into the B gap. Right. And so we're still manipulating, like you're giving the illusion that that bubble is there pre-snap, but then it's gone post-snap. Right. So that's one of the very first things we do. Reduction is great versus 10 personnel gap scheme because there is no bubble. Right. All the bubbles are covered. The ball's going to have to work lateral.
So, Coach, real quick. When you run that, I always ask this question because early on in my career, I didn't do it, but I did it later. When you run that Raider and it's a pass, do you kind of make like a natural there, like a natural twist, or do you guys say we're just sticking it in there and we're going to flush the quarterback?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And we spend a lot of time with that. And again, it's all about your personnel, right? What are your kids able to run and be successful at? For us on a Raider, on a pass, our 3 technique away from the Raider side is actually, his job is to actually loop to contain to the Raider. So he will come from, if we're in a bench front, 3 techs into the boundary, the Raiders coming from the field, the 3 tech will actually loop to contain to the field on a pass read. So we're still getting that penetration interior to the quarterback's front eye from that D end on the Raider stop, but then we're also still keeping pass rush contain rules sound because we still have the 3 tech getting to the outside arm of the quarterback.
Yep. Yeah, sorry. I always like to ask that one. That's one that we've had a lot of arguments in the coaching office about throughout my time, as whether we were going to loop that guy or do something with it on pass. So,
yeah, and it goes back to we can do that because our 3 tech's going to be a guy, right? And if your 3 tech's not a guy, then that's going to be a big ask, right, for them to do things like that. When we're in the reduction looks, we don't have to run the Raider because he's already in the B gap in the 4I.
Correct.
And then what we tell the 4I is that you now have a BC interchange on a pass. So if he gets pass read from the tackle, he's looping to contain now. And that's just 2 lateral steps to get wide to the tackle's box, right? Versus if it's a run, he's going to keep his hat in B.
I like that BC interchange. I know there's a bunch, right? Everyone always uses different terminology, and I tell people all the time, like, listen, take whatever I say and adapt it to your terminology. But I know, a guy that I listen to and work with a bunch, Cody Alexander, always called it a cop rush. Mm-hmm. But I think BC interchange probably explains it a little more in depth for a kid. If you're saying it to them for the first time, they can kind of start to work, okay, B to C interchange, I got it. So I like that term.
It's all about how you teach the kids, right? We can know everything, but it's got to be relatable to them. So BC interchange is probably the best way we explained it to them.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. So we talked about Raider. We talked about the reduction. Anything else you guys do to close that?
So this is probably, and I'm going to talk about this a lot at Glazier, but we have play families, right? So we have play families where we want to get to underlooks. We want to get to bear looks. We have our fire zone pressure families, but probably the best thing we do to manipulate run gaps is what we call bubble check. And that's our bubble check family pressures. And so what we're doing there is we're still running that Raider stunt with our weak side D in our nose. And then with our 3 tech in our rush, he's kind of the hybrid guy, right? Yeah. They're running what we call an eat game. And the eat game is the rush getting the slant and the 3 tech looping out, right?
Yeah.
And then typically what we bring with that is we will bring some type of pressure to the Raider side also. And so we can manipulate that look a bunch of different ways. So we'll run the eat game to the field, the Raider into the boundary, and then bring the boundary corner. Right.
Oh,
and then the other way we'll do it.
My language, Coach, bringing the boundary corner. Yes.
Yeah. We're a big corner blitz team. We're big believers in that.
I love it.
So and then we'll package that a bunch of different ways, right? So we'll package that with, okay, now we're running that into the boundary with the Raider to the field, and then we're going to bring our Sam, our nickel guy, right? And then we can mess with that too, is do we want him on a chase spill blitz path, or do we want him on a force blitz path, right? And then as we got going, we started running it with our will backer into the boundary. We even started running with our free safety. We call that fog.
Yes.
And it's the same look. And basically what you're giving the illusion of pre-snap is that it looks like an under, but about quarter second after the ball snap, if you freeze the frame on the end zone view, it looks like bear.
Yeah.
It looks exactly like bear. And so you're making them block a bear front without them knowing it's a bear front.
It's build a bear, right? It's the Dan Lanning thing. I thought that was the best way to describe it. We're always looking to build a bear on pressures.
Yes. So building a bear. And then the best part about that is, and we hand signal everything in, and I play the cat and mouse game. So I'll always signal really, really late. So teams aren't going to get it. Okay. So you'll see us lining up late and stuff all the time, but it's still effective. And the big thing we do is we always signal the coverage. Doesn't matter what the pressure is, because the whole defense needs to know the coverage, because the coverage is going to tell them the run fits. And so when we give them a fire call coverage wise off of bubble check pressures, they know that every single fire on a bubble check means a duo run fit rule. And so the D line actually has to get the coverage call, because it's going to change the run fit rules for them and how they're handling pullers. And it'll handle whoever our second levels defenders are. Again, components, right? Who's in the fit, who's out of the fit. If it's FIB, it might be a safety in the fit versus a linebacker. And so when we give those coverage calls, we're able to effectively communicate with every kid. They know when they hear fire on any bubble check pressure in this family that they're on a duo fit. And so that's just one of the ways we do it. And so bubble check has been great for us in stopping the run, which is always that's always the main thing. So ball or bubble check pressure family is the first thing we install after our base looks, right? Bubble check's the first pressure we're putting in, and then we'll wrinkle bubble check 4 or 5 different ways, like we said.
Now, are you, we can get as in-depth as you want or not, depending on how much you want to share. What are you basing out of coverage-wise typically when you're bringing 5 like that? Are you guys kind of 3 deep fire zone? Are you running kind of a quarters like the Big 12, where you're kind of, the Big 12 pressures where you're quarters to one side and kind of man match the other side?
Yeah, no,
are you mixing it up, doing it all?
We're if we're in a fire family, and we'll do it different ways. We have man pressures and different things. We're doing that in the 3 high look. That's more simulated type pressure. But for anything on a fire, that's going to be 3 deep, 3 under pattern match rules.
Okay, that's what I figured.
It's old school, and it's effective. And again, we play pattern match rules behind it, meaning we're not zone dropping. We're matching routes, and guys are playing mod technique on the outside receivers, and allows us to close space early and makes the quarterback have to fit tight windows and basically get rid of the ball quick.
Yeah, I did a similar thing. We were a big quarters match team, but we also ran Rip Liz. So fire zone, we just played Rip Liz a man down. Mm-hmm. Right. So kind of some of the under rules we would explain to them, like, hey, look, you got to take 3 through here and stuff like that, because you don't have another guy. And so those would work. And once the kids understood it, was like, look, we're just playing Rip Liz with a man down. And then kids were like, oh, this is great. So it was, but that's kind of what we did, right? We were a man match team. My kids could never, at the last school I was at, could never quite understand just doing a zone drop and having zone eyes. If it wasn't clearly defined to them, they couldn't do it. So we found out man match worked for us really well, because there's a lot of rules. So
yeah. And I think it's like for high school kids, it's all about, they need to have rules because they need to have guidance, right? Yeah. Now you can't give them too many rules, because then they'll break the rules, right? So we always try to think in rules of like 3s and 5s. It's like, so you got to know you have 3 rules here, or you have 5 rules here. And for us, the back end guys, it's a lot of 3s, a lot of 3 rules for the things that we're asking them to do. So that's exactly right. But then what that allows you to do is it allows you to do what I think is good coaching, and that's recycling. And so you can, when we call bench snapper fire, field E corner fire, field E fog fire, odd war fire, that's all the same thing. It's the same exact thing, presented totally different to the offense, but it's a bubble check pressure, it's duo fits, it's 3 deep, 3 under pattern match.
Correct. Yeah. And you're just changing the guy who's coming, basically.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I love it. I think that, doing exactly what you said, you're presenting something in 100 different ways, but it's the same thing for your defense. I did a very similar thing, but we did it more out of quarters. But right, it was kind of the same thing. We're going to bring the backside corner, safety or will. Here's the names of them. And then here's our empty check. Let's go play football.
Yep.
And the kids were really good and did it fast, and they knew all the checks. So I could just call it in, and I could, for all intents and purposes, walk away. And I mean, like, walk away from the hand signaling. And those kids knew the checks. If they came out empty, they just went ahead and they made the check. I didn't have to do anything. I used to tell people all the time, that's the way I like to coach, right? If they can make all the calls and they know what they're doing on the field, let them do it. So
yeah. And there's something to that, right? When you make kids have to communicate on the field, I don't know what it is, but they're just more focused and locked in when you make them communicate. So if they have to talk to each other to get aligned and get checked into different things, I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with it, Coach. I think it's the ownership aspect, right? When our kids knew all the checks and I told them, like, look, you're only getting the base signal in, and then you guys got to make the adjustment off there. They knew that at that point they owned the defense, because I was like, look, I can't run out there for you and make a call on 3rd and 8 when a guy goes in motion. So you better figure it out.
Yeah, for sure.
Or we're going to give up 42 and I'm getting fired. So
yeah,
we're going to give up 42 and a different guy is going to be talking to you on Monday, guys. So
But you talked a lot about earlier about giving different looks to the offenses, and it becomes really tough on an offense to run gap schemes when you're moving alignments. You got to be prepared for everything. So I think you're forcing offenses into that outside zone or inside zone looks for them to simplify what they're doing. I know as an offensive coordinator, I'd be looking to see how those safeties fit, knowing you have 6 solid guys down. Can you kind of talk about maybe you see a tight end wing look, team trying to run outside zone, stretch to that side, and how your safeties, defensive backs would have to get involved?
Yeah, and that's a big piece to us too with teaching run fits is if you can't tackle, you can't play DB for me. That's just kind of like a rule we have. It's like, okay, that kid can't tackle, he can't play. Because we, again, if we're going to put 11 guys on the field and they got to be able to play empty against 12 personnel, and then they got to play tight end wing against personnel, you better get an extra guy down in the fit, but he also has got to be able to cover, right? So big things we talk about, and it's all in our language as we talk about verbiage is like spill to kill, which is how you handle a puller, stack fits, duo fits, pizza fits, all our different types of fits based on coverages. And then with the DB specifically, we're using a lot of terminology like second force, right? So are you the first force player or are you the second force player, right? If a corner is a deep third player, right, and he's on a nub tight end side, he's going to play flat foot technique and he's going to play what we call second force, meaning if they ran pin and pull into the boundary, you got to be the second force player on the second puller, right? So, and the first force player could be if your corner's in the flat, he would be like your first force, right? So he's first force in the flat on a nub, and then your DB that's playing mod deep third on that nub side, he's going to be the second force player, right? And forcing it back into your help, and your help is the 2 backers in the box, your duo fit guy. So we use a lot of terminology like that, and second force has been a really good way for us to explain that.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. I'm like, Coach, I'm going to have to just get a bunch of terminology from you because I like your terminology a lot.
Oh, we put a lot of thought into what we're teaching kids, I guess. So
no,
sometimes things, it sounds easy, but it's like, dude, if you want them to execute it, you better put it in a way that they can understand it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes perfect sense. I guess I can just picture myself trying to make that exact same explanation, but I didn't have the term second force. And I'm like, you're talking to them and like, all right, here's what you got to do. But that's such a great thing, right? We're over there like, look, you're the outside guy. You better box this back in or you're screwed. It'd be nice to be like, hey, you're second force. And just move on with the day, right?
Yeah. So second force is probably, that's like the most common one and has been really, really effective for us. And again, those are all things that we've stolen. And when I've coached collegiately and learned different things about run fits from different guys, like second force was one that really stuck.
Yeah, no, I've already wrote it down and I'm stealing it. So that's perfect. So yeah, I know, look, that's been the big thing this year that you said that you've seen, that I've really seen on film, especially breaking it down at the collegiate level. I know, Matt, we've broken down so much of it. Outside zone has become, right, almost the staple in so many different places. And I know you're still seeing a lot of gap scheme, but you're starting to see more outside zone scheme. How are you guys kind of combating that? And I'm sure this is such a complex crappy question to ask, but talk a little bit about how you guys attack outside zone.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing with outside zone, again, it comes back to how you're playing tight ends.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's like playing that knock six on a tight end has been huge because you're getting vertical penetration at the point of attack on the snap. And
Yeah.
if you could get knocked back on the tight end, outside zone's dead in the water. And so that's a huge one. We do not see a lot of 10 personnel outside zone, but our offense runs 10 personnel outside zone. So we get a lot of practice against it starting in May. So it's something we spend a lot of time talking about, is how to play outside zone and get it forced back into your help. How are we going to play tight ends if we have a tight end? Who's the extra player in the fit? All those types of things. But I think the majority of what you're seeing with outside zone right now is teams are winning the advantage because they're playing some type of 3 down front structure.
Yeah.
And then
Correct.
they're winning with tight ends blocking on DBs. And that's a very easy way to, that's just like common sense offense to me, is that if you get a tight end on a DB, you're going to win more often than not. Or if you're in the case of other teams, they won't even block the DB because they're like, we're going to make the DB tackle people. And that goes back to the same thing for me, is like, if the DB can't tackle, he can't play for me. The DB's got to be able to tackle people.
Yeah, I think those are good points. We watched and we kind of, made our bread and butter this year on watching and writing about a lot of FCS film this year, on our website. And, Montana State was the king of outside zone teams this year. But just like you said, throughout the playoffs, they played a lot of odd teams. And then they ran into North Dakota State, who is an even front team and obviously very stout up front. And boy, did they have trouble running outside zone in the FCS National Championship. It was a little bit of a different world, and they were doing exactly what you're saying. They were knocking back the tight end, and then the backside, whether it was a 3-tech or a nose or a 2-eye, was just absolutely not getting overtaken and penetrating. So they were stopping it on the outside point of attack, and then the cutback player was winning for them too on the defensive line. And man, it was like the linebackers don't even have to work here. The D line's just winning every rep. So it's pretty impressive to see.
And I think you would see, if you watched our film, you would see something very similar on our outside zone fits. It's rarely our linebackers are getting any action. It's typically all done by our D line or an unblocked DB. And just like you said, that reach, the 3-tech not getting reached, right? And we're super simple with what we teach our defensive linemen. Our D line coach does a great job in that he doesn't spend 30 of his 40 minutes of Indy working pass rush. He's spending 75 to 80% working on strike, read, and reach. And we drill that all the damn time. And so it's the same thing, right? It's like we get knocked back at the point of attack and the 3-tech doesn't get reached, and then we're winning a lot of those snaps on outside zone.
Yeah. No, I think you make a perfect point there. And going back to linebackers, and again, I'm not coaching right now, but breaking down the most of the film, when I see linebackers make tackle on outside zone, it's always when it's cuts all the way back, right? And they're just falling naturally back into it. It's one of the easiest tackles they'll ever make. And it's because the D-line's doing a great job and the linebackers just get to fall back and, for lack of a better term, fall back and take credit, right, with the tackle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So I love it. So, Coach, what else are we, these run fits, you've kind of talked about closing the bubble, your DBs, and how you kind of do different things with them. What else on the run fits we going to cover tonight on the on that piece to it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, especially if you're going to be multiple, is how you're teaching the run fits. And for us, we try to be simple. We have 3 run fit categories. We call it our stack fits, our duo fits, and our pizza fits, right?
So intrigued by, you said pizza fits twice. I'm so intrigued by this now.
And it's actually a really stupid easy concept, but basically our rule is, and again, we have to signal the coverage in because everybody's got to know, right? Is that if we have a 3-man surface at the second level of our defense, that's what we're calling a stack fit. Right. And whatever our coverage is going to determine, hey, we're going to have 3 guys in the fit and a 4th guy that's out of the fit, your RPO player. Right. Yeah. And so we manipulate that by the fronts and the coverages, but the coverage is going to tell them what the fit is. Right. And so we have really easy rules for this, is that, and it doesn't matter what we're running, if the coverage starts with a number, it's a stack fit. So if we call 3 insert, 3 boundary, 2 Tampa, 5, two robber, anything with it started with a number, it's stack fit rules. Okay. And with our 3-man surface, we're always going to have guys spill pullers at the stack fit. And then we're always going to have a force player, a run through player, and a cutback player on the spin fit. Okay. And then, so that's just stack fit rules. And so we can run stack fits a bunch of different ways, but they know if coverage starts with a number, it's a stack fit. Duo fits is what you're running on a lot of your fire zones, which is basically meaning you're going to have 5 down and you're going to have a 2-man second level. You're going to have a 2-man fit, and then you're going to have your third guy that's out of the fit. And your guy that's out of the fit's your RPO player, right? And formation and backfield alignment determines who's in the fit and who's out of the fit. And so they know that if the coverage is just a name, so if they hear fire, they know fire is a duo fit. Doesn't start with a number, they hear duo fit. How we handle pullers on duo fits is we gotta box the puller, basically. And we try to, box is like kind of a vague, I almost wish we had a better term for it. But box is basically, we're still striking. We're not trying to get upfield, but we're actually trying to meet the puller, right?
Yeah.
So we're still attacking the guy. We're just trying to keep our outside arm free and hit the puller square. But again, they hear any coverage that's just a name, Cleo, clubs, fire, like they know it's duo fit. When we're in our man fit rules, okay, so that'd be 0, match, uno, okay, that's our pizza fit rules. Pizza fit rules are stupid easy. And that is like, you're basically going to correct the front, my man, my fit. Okay. So we have all our man components, so we can have an IO, Amigo component on any of those, right? How you pick bunches and clusters, right? So tight end wing with the back on the same side, you got to have a man component for that, right? And then what your job is to pizza fit, my man, my fit. So wherever that component takes me to my man, that's how I'm going to fit it. And then depending on how the front is blocked in the man pressure, you're basically correcting it, because if you're the guy in man coverage, you're the guy coming from depth.
Yeah,
So,
I'm going to make it really easy, because as soon as you said it like that, I'm thinking, right, crack replace. Like that's a great example of that man fit replace, right? I got a tight slot, I'm man to man. He goes to crack the outside backer. I now have to replace.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. And again, maybe, so we'll bring a lot of like interior pressure with man coverage, and maybe the puller is going to log that pressure guy, right? Or he's going to box him and kick him out. Okay. Well, depending on how it's sorted out, it's your job as the guy coming from depth. Maybe you were man on the hip guy, and the hip guy ended up logging that D end. Okay. Yeah. Well, now your job is to get the force. Okay. Versus if he came out and boxed him, now your job is to get the fill. Okay. So yeah, that's when we just call it pizza fits, and it's basically my man, my fit, and you're correcting it as you come from depth.
Yeah. Just making the guy right. Correct. It's something I've said 100 times, but pizza fits is so much more catchy.
Yeah, pizza fits is always very memorable. You'll hear them barking pizza, pizza, pizza all the time. It's like, you guys really like saying pizza, even though that's like the easiest one we do.
No, I love that, Coach. That's, it's really, I think the most impressive thing, and not that everything you haven't talked about isn't impressive, but these 3 things have been really impressive to hear. And, I always kind of pride myself on a guy that defines a lot of things, but now I feel bad. I feel like I'm not defining things very well. I think I need to go back to the drawing board again, because listening to you to talk about breaking it all the way down to, hey, these are duo fits, these are stack fits, these are pizza fits. I've explained the same thing that you're explaining, but you're able to just do it with one term. And I'm like, dang it. Like, that's such a perfect way to define that. He's doing something in one term that it took me a paragraph to explain to kids. Like,
yeah.
And that's important though, Coach, like you said, like if you can think about the practice time in the game, making corrections on the fly, all that stuff. If you can say, hey, we're in stack fits here and you didn't do this, it's way easier, right, than me saying like, hey, look, we're in quarters and you're supposed to spill and then you got to overlap, and right, you got that accomplished way quicker than I did. So I think it's really impressive the way you guys have defined that. I really like that. I'm stealing the crap out of all this, Coach. So
yeah, that's the best part, is it's all correlated, right? Is we called it stack fits because in 2014 the defense was called stack, and stack was a 4-3 defense, right? So it was always a stack fit. And then duo means two. So like that's easy, 2-man fit. And pizza is like, hey, if he takes it's just like you're sharing pizza with your buddy. Like he takes your piece of pizza, you take his piece of pizza. So it's like, it's super easy. And like the kids just remember it really well.
And that's a great way of explaining, right? Like the pizza thing, like it sounds silly and we're laughing about it, but to a kid, right, that's going to make perfect sense. And he's like, yeah, I'm taking his pizza, right? Because I got to eat pizza tonight, coach, So I laugh at it because it's just silly enough that I know that it's going to work perfectly with the 16 to 18-year-old kid, right? Like that makes sense. That's perfect. So, Matt, you're muted.
Dealing with the offensive linemen, we used to do the same thing. Fast food was our double team call. And the kids loved getting out there and just yelling cheeseburger, 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 cheeseburger. And that was their favorite part of it. It wasn't actually the football, it was just being able to yell cheeseburger at somebody.
Yeah. And now they're communicating, right? Because they're having fun and they like saying it. So they're communicating, they're talking more on the field, which is making everybody better.
I love this, man. Coach, just
good stuff.
No diagrams, no presentation. Coach Bradburn's learning the hell out of some stuff that Look, and I appreciate this in some of our listeners, right? I get crap sometimes like, we don't do no stuff I can listen to in the car. Everybody's got diagrams. I'm like, well, perfect. Here's one for you. You can listen to it all the way on your ride. So
I'm the same way. I'm driving, like I'm in a situation where I'm driving a lot. And so like, I don't have time to sit down and watch a video. Like if I could just throw it onto my car stereo and then I'm just listening to that on my commutes, like that's the best part.
Yeah, which, we kind of do them half and half, and it's really what people want to do. And, but I'm with you, Coach. We want to make it work for everybody. That's why sometimes I kind of preface it. I'm like, this is not a good Apple podcast video. So if you're listening, just click over to YouTube and enjoy this episode. So Coach, listen, we went through all these pieces. Any other piece on the run fits that we want to talk about tonight? It's a pretty full menu. So
yeah, no, you're good. I think it's just important too, like, because again, we're starting to get into a lot more 3-high stuff. We're running more 3-high than we ever have, and we'll continue to grow on that next year. And I think if you're going to be a 3-high team, you better be absolutely dialed in your run fit rules to make it work. And so as we've expanded into that, like this has all been really, really good carryover for us because we're running some different coverages and things with the 3-high, but and different pressures as well. But the one thing the kids have been able to correlate really well to is the run fit rules on it and being able to keep those same rules the same in terms of let coverage dictate fits, and coverages will dictate who's in the fit, who's out of the fit, and we'll keep the rules the same that way. And so when we do a new install with the 3-high look, there's still relevance there, right? Because of the name of the coverage and the kids know what their fit rules are.
So it's still those three kind of, it's duo, stack, or pizza out of 3-high, correct?
Yeah, it's the same things, and we'll run different coverages back there. It's like when we call 2 robber, they know it's a stack fit. When we call buzz, they know that's a duo fit. And 5 is a stack fit, and match is a pizza fit. So like there's all those things still correlate even as we've gotten into the 3-high stuff that's been brand new install to our kids. Like all of that stuff being able to be correlated back to things they already know has been incredibly valuable in our install process.
Yeah, it's got to speed it way up. Because I've always said like my biggest struggle with the 3-high as a coach is just never quite grasping the run fits. But maybe it's just like you say, it's like, look, you don't have to create new run fits. You have to figure out a way to make it fit your current style of run fits. That's probably a better way to think of it now that I'm sitting here pondering it as you're speaking.
Yeah, for sure. I think the big thing too is how much time do guys spend drilling run fits? Because I've been a lot of places, high school and college, and I don't think we spend nearly enough time actually doing a step to fit drill where kids are learning their run fit rules. And I'm not talking about linebacker indie where they're doing run fits for 50% of their indie, right? Like you better have your DBs dialed in on run fits. One of the ways we do that, and it goes all the way back to how we teach it. So when we do an install May 1 and we go through our components in there, and then we do our pre-snap prep on the field, and then we go into practice, we always do a drill that's called 8-on-7. And the 8-on-7 is just step to fit. And so all we're doing in that drill is there's 8 offensive players, there's 7 defensive players, and we're just giving them a coverage. So, hey, we're working stack fits here. Hey, we're working duo fits here. Hey, we're working pizza fits here. And then we're just running the same run schemes we see all the time. We're running power, counter, inside zone, wide zone, outside zone, duo. And we're just running the crud out of those over and over and over again. And then once they're in the fit, we yell freeze. And so when we yell freeze, everybody's got to stop, right? And they're just speed walking this drill. It's not like inside run and we're taking each other's heads off.
Yeah.
Spring ball in California, there's no pads and helmets. Everybody's out there in a practice jersey, not padded. That's the state's rules. So we have to abide by that. But for us, it's like, okay, well, we still got to get good at stopping the run. I've honestly grown to like it the more I've been doing it, because with high school kids, what it's doing is it's making them use their hands.
Yeah.
And I think that's something like the college level that's really easy to do, but the high school kids always struggle with that because kids want to chest bump, titty bump, play with their shoulder pads, and they don't use their hands. When we take all the pads and the helmets off, kids are using their freaking hands. And that for us is super important. So they're using their hands in these drills. Now we're getting step to fit. So now we're working repetitively every single day over and over and over again, all these different types of run fits versus these rules. And what we do at the second level in the run fits is we make guys rotate in at the different spots. So there's not like a Mike, a Will, and a safety. It's just like one line of guys, and they're just plugging in. Okay, I'm going to be the third guy in the fit. I'm the middle guy in the fit. I'm the outside guy in the fit. Okay, based on backfield alignment, am I in the fit or out of the fit? Am I a 2-pop player? Am I a 1-pop player? And then we just rotate them through, bam, 1, 2, 3, out. And then their next guys are just keep rotating in. And what that's allowing us to do is now our back end guys being in that drill when they are in the fit and say like in FIB look and fire zone, and we have the strong safety, he's got to be in the duo fit. Well, now our strong safety knows how to duo fit because he's been doing it every day repetitively since May against every run scheme we see. So that's just a huge piece, and being able to teach that is, I do think, especially if you're going to be multiple, you better spend a lot of time teaching kids how to be dialed in the run fits at every position.
Yeah, I like that. This was, Matt, you and I had a big conversation about this, and I also had one with Coach Avery. Right, the Vikings defense was one I watched a lot this season. And Coach, it's just like you said, right? They're so multiple and so different things. I was like, how do you figure out how to teach everyone, right? Because at some point, right, their safety's blitzing and he's got to learn how to spill or box. And then their corner's going, or hey, it's the Will backer, but he's coming inside. And it's like, all right, how would I drill it where every guy gets these reps? And just like you're talking about, it's like, hey, here's a drill. We did a very similar one called just block rec is what we called it, but it was exactly what you're talking about with no ball, right? So it was all these run schemes. There was no football, so you had to fit it, just know what you're doing. Yeah. But what I never did is what you're talking about is rotating certain guys in the spots where, hey, this guy's probably not going to play this every down, but at some point he's going to have to learn how to do this. Well, let me just stick him in here at this drill, even though it's not a traditional position, so he can figure out that skill. That's a very good idea right there, Coach, to do it. And it's funny because I just talked about that for probably the last 4 weeks. And now I get a coach on the podcast that gives me the answer to it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's been a really, that we did something like that when I was at Rocky Mountain College, and Joe Dunning he's still the DC there, and he was a Montana State guy with Cho, and there's a lot of carryover there, right? And that's just kind of one of the little, as I got to learning how he teaches run fits, and like that was one thing we picked up, and then we've been doing it ever since and taking it to different places now, and it's been really valuable for us on the back end.
It's bittersweet for me, Coach. It's almost annoying when someone gives me a super common sense answer to a problem I've been having. I'm like, God, we're really bad at this. Somebody's like, well, like, do you do this? And I'm like, well, shit, I didn't think about that. That's like I was thinking of way more complex solutions, and you just gave me a simple one. So I love it.
Oh, yeah. No, you're good. It's, put a lot of thought into it over the years. And again, it's all about your opponents, right? I think the most unfortunate thing to happen to a young defensive coach is you get stuck in a league where you've got to play the same offense every week. Yeah. I think that's the worst possible thing that could happen to you. I've been so fortunate that the places I've been, I have to defend flex bone, wishbone, wing T, single wing, spread, 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 20 personnel, 21, 22, flanker, split back here, counter, right? So like I have to play so much different. I've had to coach against so much different things that I may not have been good at it initially, but when you see it year after year after year and you get sick of
it out.
yeah, you get sick of losing to it. So you figure it out and then you beat it.
No, I know that one real well, Coach. I still do not like the single wing. I don't ever want to see it. Don't get me started. It's nightmare fuel. So Coach, we end every podcast with the same question, especially when a coach comes on for the first time. Not necessarily a football question, but kind of a football program question. What is the coolest or most unique thing that your program does that not a lot of other programs do?
We run in-game analytics on a computer, which is not allowed at the NCAA level during a game, but at the high school level it is. Texas, the UIL is on a different set of rules, right? So I think Texas just legalized it finally this past season, but I've been using it for 3 years and it's fantastic. So we use a program called Modern Football Technology game day software that gives us accurate in-game analytics efficiency metrics during the game. And I can honestly say there's probably not a lot of defensive coordinators that are doing that at my level.
No, that sounds awesome. I guarantee you can do it in Florida. There's no rules here. No one gives a shit. So there's probably
yeah, I think as far as I know, the NFHS, which is governing of 48 states, I think in terms of high school athletics, it's totally allowed. So
yeah, I think we go by NFHS, right, Matt?
What are the main things you're getting out of that?
Yeah.
Well, if you want to carry it over into what we're talking about today is, so we can check reports in between series, and my guy in the box is good at it. He can relay information down to me on the sideline in the headset. So we can filter it. So we can check on, hey, what's their top 3 run schemes? Okay. And so he could filter it by those run schemes. And then we can look at the coverage efficiencies, and it's coverage, but it's a run. But like, again, coverage correlates to run fit, right? So based on those coverages, we can actually see the down and distance efficiency of our run fits against that run concept. So we can see if there's like in all of our duo fit coverages, we're like 40% or better on efficiency. And so that's good for us. So we're going to keep coming back to that versus if it's like, and again, efficiency's talking about offensive efficiency. So like you want that number to be as close to 0 as possible. Versus if you're like seeing something that's at like 58%, 72%, 80%, right? Okay, hey, every time we've called this against gap scheme, if we're in a stack fit against gap scheme, or like our efficiency's been really poor, right? So we know to call less of that if we're dialing up when they're running gap scheme and to get into more of the run fit coverage wise that is allowing us to actually be more efficient against those.
So all right, sorry. Now I have follow-up questions.
Do it, man.
During the game, are you having to like punch in information and stuff? Like, is he?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty intuitive. Like he has to.
Like, what's the guy doing in the box? Like, all right, it's 3rd and 6, and you guys blitz and get a tackle for loss. Is he inputting something there, or?
Yeah, so like he marks. He always starts with marking the hash in the opponent personnel, and then as I give the play call in the headset, he taps it in. He doesn't have to type into it, like it's all tap based.
So this is all preloaded. So like your whole defensive menu is preloaded.
Whole defensive menu is preloaded. There's like hundreds of calls in there, right? That it's all done, but he can punch it all in, and it's set up to like filter. So like when I call like a pressure, whatever coverage we run behind that pressure, it automatically filters to it. So he doesn't have to sort through 25 coverages or whatever. So he puts that in, and then we put the opponent's formation surface, and then the concept, did they run counter or zone or whatever, pass protection if it's a pass, and then he just marks the yard line and hits enter. It's done. So like he doesn't have to do any of the math or anything. The software generates all the other data points that you need to like get information, right? So like things like down and distance, series sequence, gain, loss, like all that stuff's automated. So all he's really doing is play call, yard line, hash, and that's it.
This sounds like a nightmare as an offensive coach that you'd have to face a defense that has so many different fronts, so many different coverages, using analytics to get in the best spot. Sounds terrible.
Yeah, we had a really good year on defense, so we like to think we're rolling with a pretty good formula.
Kyle, you're muted, I think.
I am muted on my own podcast. All right, Coach, we're gonna need to have you come back on, talk a little bit more about this on the podcast. Like this feels like a next episode for you to come back and talk more about some of this analytics stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And let's maybe I can actually set up so I can screen share.
We'll need a screen on that one. I want to see it. Yeah, this is fascinating. So
yeah, I can screen share it. It's on my football computer that we use, and then I can actually pull up the film and the clinic presentations we use to explain all this stuff better, so people can put visuals to it all.
Yeah, let's get you back after you're done with all the clinics, and maybe next month, and we'll go back through this. But Coach, appreciate you coming on tonight. It was awesome, especially for a podcast episode. I loved every minute of it. I took a lot of notes myself. I pulled the role of Matt. I took a bunch of notes tonight on my computer. So we appreciate you taking your time and chatting with us tonight.
Yeah, for sure. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and looking forward to coming back, talk more soon.
Absolutely, Coach. For Coach, for me, and for Matt, Board Drill Podcast, we appreciate you guys listening. We will see you next week.